Welcome to the Sermon in the Valley with Pastor Rob Eller. You can find this podcast on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. If you like what you hear in this podcast, please subscribe to it and share it with your friends and family. Thank you. Welcome back to the Sermon in the Valley. Pastor Rob Eller here with your weekly sermon episode, with the reading in my sermon from Sunday, July 12th, the 7th Sunday after Pentecost. Let's get started. The Holy Gospel according to St. Matthew, the 13th chapter. That same day Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea. Such great crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat there, while the whole crowd stood on the beach. And then he told them many things in parables, saying, "Listen, a sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seeds fell on a path, and the birds came and ate them up. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil, and they sprang up quickly, since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them out. Other seeds fell on good soil, and brought forth grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. If you have ears, listen. Hear then the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what is sown in the heart. This is what was sown on the path. As for what was sown on rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet such a person has no root, but endures only for a while. And when trouble or persecution arises on account of the word, that person immediately falls away. As for what was sown among thorns, this is the one who hears the word, but the cares of this age and the lure of wealth choke the word, and it yields nothing. But as for what was sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it, and indeed bears fruit and yields in one case 100-fold, in another 60, and in another 30. The Gospel of the Lord. Well, it's that time of year when the planting's done and the real work, the maintaining of the garden, begins. By this time, we've already planted what we wanted this year, whether it's wildflowers, vegetables, and herbs, or maybe something ambitious like reseeding a lawn. Gardening is not something that can be done passively. It requires careful attention to the plants, making sure they get enough water and nutrients, trimming off some growth to encourage it elsewhere. Growing up, my parents had a small garden in their backyard. They'd grow rhubarb every year, and the other half of the garden would rotate other vegetables. I, unfortunately, was not blessed to inherit my mom's green thumb. Quite the opposite, in fact. I have managed to kill a cactus by overwatering it. Understanding the makeup of the soil in our gardens, in this area especially, is absolutely crucial. If you're like me, you may have clay throughout your gardens and flower beds, which can prove difficult, if not impossible, for certain plants to take root and thrive. It takes time and effort to till the soil and break up the clay enough to just be able to plant some bushes or flowers. And just when you think you've finally broken through the clay and mixed the soil up enough, you hit another clay layer. This year my wife and I have taken to what we call chaos gardening. Just throwing flower seeds at random in our flower beds and seeing what comes up, which we have found works very well for some of the flowers we grow. What's amusing about this method is that it mirrors what Jesus is trying to teach us in our gospel lesson for today. The next couple of weeks, we get planting-themed parables from Jesus. Parables are Jesus' favorite way of teaching because it takes a theological concept and reframes it in a way that the disciples and audience at the time would better understand, often breaking it down as he went. We're very familiar with many of these parables. The prodigal son, the mustard seed, the treasure in the field, and today's parable is no exception. Today we have the parable of the sower, or as I like to refer to it, the parable of the soils. I feel this different name is more appropriate because The story is more about where the seed lands, as opposed to the one throwing the seed. The parable starts with the sower going out to plant seed in his fields. The seed ends up in 4 different areas. There is, of course, the good soil, where the seed is able to take hold and grow and thrive. The seed also ends up in 3 areas that aren't so good for seeds to grow. A beaten down path, a ground filled with rocks, and a patch overtaken by thorns. Some describe the sower as careless for letting the seed land in those areas, but I feel there is more to it than that. The way Jesus explains this parable is that he is the sower. The seed is the word of God that he is preaching to the people. And each of those areas the seed is sown represents the hearts of those who are listening to him. Soil, much like our hearts, is shaped by the environment around it. In Jesus' time, a path would not have been paved sidewalk like we have today. It would have been dirt, beaten down over time by constant use. It becomes packed hard, so much so that nothing can grow in it. Any seeds that would have been dropped on the path would just be snatched up by a bird. People are no different than that path. When we get beaten down and walked over again and again and again, it's easy for our hearts to become hardened and for us to develop a tough exterior shell that prevents anything from getting through. Due to this hardened state, the word doesn't get through and is easily taken away. The rocky ground is someone who doesn't have the ability to deal with, well, rocky ground, which is ironic. The word is able to spring up, but doesn't have the ability to take root and stick around when the times get tough. The word becomes a way to make us feel good in the moment, rather than sustain us through the hard times that lie ahead. When we need it most, it fades away because we didn't give it a good foundation to grow. What do thorns and other invasive plants do? They take over the ground, choke out anything else trying to take root. It's why when we plant anything, we must first remove all those weeds before we plant the seeds. And we know how difficult it can be to remove those weeds. Some have roots that go very, very deep. Those thorns and weeds can be anything in our lives that distracts us and crowds out the word from taking hold and sustaining us. We would rather let those distractions stay because to remove them would be painful and messy. And we say to ourselves, well, at least something is growing in our soil. That leaves us with the good soil. It's the soil we all wish to become if we aren't already. But as we know, it isn't something as simple as going to the nearest garden center and buying a bag of good soil. It takes time and energy to cultivate soil that is good for planting. It needs to be worked again and again, but not so much that its structure is broken down. It needs nutrients so that plants don't just grow, but flourish. And when it's ready, look out, because that seed of the word will take root and grow in abundance in us. Now, traditionally, we've been taught that this parable is meant to represent different people, with each person embodying one of those 4 areas that the seed has landed. But what if there was a different way to look at this? What if instead of 4 different people, those 4 types of ground are the same person? What if they are each of us, just at different points in our lives? Whether that over the course of years, months, or even the same day. Some weeks we may feel like the hardened path, beaten down and depleted. And depleted ground doesn't take seed the same way rested ground does. Some weeks we're the rocky ground. The joy rises fast in our hearts. It doesn't have strong roots yet though, and it burns off in a day. Some weeks the thorns are thick, the bills, the worries, the distractions that eat everything before it can grow. And the joy is unable to root at all. Some weeks, grace upon grace, the ground is ready, and something takes root that you'll be harvesting for years to come. Earlier I said the sower could be seen as careless, because he is spreading the seed in what seems to be a haphazard manner. Seed, in a way, is a farmer's savings account. Money you wouldn't actually see until harvest. He's letting it fall on ground that isn't prepared. Rocks still in it, thorns still rooted, the path still packed hard. This is not an accident, though, nor was he naive about the ground. It was completely intentional. Think about that for a moment. Everything in us says to wait until the ground is ready, and then we'll invest in it. Show us the good soil, and then we'll sow. The sower is instead saying, let's see if the seed will take root. If not, I'll help it along. He will not let what the ground looks like right now be the final word on what it could still become. So if that's true of the ground in the parable, it has to be true about the ground in our hearts. There are seasons in our lives where the last thing we want to do is pray, but we do it anyway. There are seasons where coming to church may feel like walking on packed dirt, where nothing is getting through, but we show up regardless. You don't know if the seed will take, but you try because you know that once the seed is planted, you start to work on the soil so that it sprouts. Otherwise, you're waiting to feel like good soil, and you've turned readiness into a requirement, which is backwards of how it works. With all that said, this isn't permission to stay hard, rocky, thorny ground forever. Rather, it's permission to stop waiting until you're not, before you let anything in. And that same logic applies to the people we encounter in our neighborhoods and communities. We prejudge people thinking, that doesn't look like good soil. They might not listen to the word and let it blossom inside them. And we decide that before we've thrown a single seed in their direction, that it's not worth it. Churches do this too. Not just people. A congregation can spend its whole life organized around the ground that's already yielding, the reliable ground, the easy ground, and never once walk out toward the ground that looks like it won't take anything. When the church thinks like that, we haven't been careful stewards. Instead, we've quietly started auditing people rather than loving them. But that's not what we're called to do. We've been called to spread the word, not judge someone's worthiness of receiving it. Just as the word has been planted in the beaten down, rocky, thorny soil of our hearts, we spread it likewise to others whose soil is also beaten down, rocky, and thorny. We don't know the soil in others' hearts until we sow that seed of the gospel. Some may just need a bit of gentle tilling to break it up into good soil. Others may require more work and some heavy-duty equipment. Regardless, we still try. And when the work seems like too much, we don't give up. We dig in further, bring in some help, and keep going. The work of spreading the gospel is never meant to be easy, but it is worth the effort we put in. The parable doesn't end with the sower's choice. It ends with the harvest he never controls. 30, 60, 100-fold. He doesn't get to pick the outcome or the guarantee of it even happening. All he gets to do is sow the seeds. That's the whole of it. Not certainty, but hope. We don't know this week which ground we are going to encounter. Not our own, not our neighbors. We are never supposed to know. What we get is the seed and the choice to throw it anyway. So sow into the hard ground this week. First your own, the part of you that's tired or numb or hasn't felt ready in a long time. And then the ground beyond you, the person you'd normally pass over, the conversation you'd normally avoid. Not because you know it'll take, because that's simply what sowers do. The ground doesn't have to look ready. It never did. Neither did you, the day someone first sowed the seed of the gospel into you. So go into the field and do the same for someone else. And all of God's people said, Amen. Thank you for listening to this sermon. If you like what you hear, please subscribe to this podcast, share this episode, share this podcast with your friends, your family, and yes, even your enemies. Spread the good news for everyone to hear. The Sermon in the Valley is a production of Gutenberg Media and is written and produced at the Patrick Stevens Broadcast Studio here in the heart of the Tuscarawas Valley. God's mercy, grace, peace, and love be with each and every single one of you. And as always, have a blessed day.